There we go. Hello witches and welcome to this new channel where we will talk about witchery, my own experience in witchery and activism, because the two things should go together. What are you doing here if you're not hexing the patriarchy? You can call me Isha, my pronouns are she, they, and I'm a fat, queer, neurodivergent witch of color. A feminist, a socialist, just so you know. Was it necessary to have another witchy channel? Especially for me, because that's what I used to do. I thought not, until last week something synchronistically interesting happened. Aster Perpetua posted this video, and I was so incredibly grateful for it, because as usual, I never quite consider how important it is for me, because if something is important for me, then surely, you know, it's just me. The world doesn't revolve around me, or does it? But the importance of what she brought up about representation hit me, and hit me just in the right place. Because last weekend, at the very same time that she posted that video, I attended my first in-person witchy stall market with my own shop, which I opened last June. And it was an experience. I am not a very outgoing, out there person. I am very much used to be in my house, in my space. Part of my neurodivergence on the autistic spectrum is that I rely a lot on rituals, on habit, which is also why I very much like witchery and witchcraft. But because of that, it very much hit me in the face how white the witchy scene is everywhere, whether it's markets, whether it's here on YouTube. And so this being the one kind of sort of skill that I have, I feel bad the moment that I say it, because how is it a skill to talk to a camera? But this being one of the things that I have known how to do for almost 13 years in these or different shapes, I decided, you know what, Aster, you're right, we need to take up space. And so here I am. What are we going to do on this channel? I'm glad you asked. So here's my introduction in witchery terms. I was born and raised in Italy. However, my father is Egyptian, so I have this dual heritage, which I actually like spelled this way. And I know that most of what we hear about Italian witchcraft is actually from second generation people from the US. However, having been born and raised there, I can tell you this about witchcraft in Italy. We just think that it's Catholicism on steroids. Like, I have been raised, much like Aster, within contexts that consider rituals and witchcraft very, very normal. They're very normalized. They're very much entwined with Catholicism, because I guess it's the way that you kept the legitimacy of your rituals that weren't quite Catholic at all. But if you need to survive stuff like the Spanish Inquisition, I guess that those things get syncretized. Hence why I've been around everybody, every family that I knew of in my village had their own like loyal cartomancer. That was something that everybody did. In my village, which was 600 people, like there were like 2 cartomancer mainly, and you were sort of choosing a team when you were choosing one of them. My grandparents were farmers, so I've been raised in the countryside, so there was a lot of following nature cycles, all of that, which admittedly I'm very skittish about. Like, I'm not good with bugs, all that kind of stuff, which is weird for someone that's been in the country. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. Because I've been raised there, there is a lot that I can share about that I should have known at some point was witchcraft. I don't think we've ever used that term, but there are a lot of terms that I hear. Dr. Angela Pucca, who is Italian and has a channel about occultism and esotericism from a scholar point of view. All that she talks about are things that I very well know because I was around them. So there's a bit that I can bring to you of my experience. On second point, there's my current practice, which actually is not old at all. I have started to practice a little over a year and a day ago. I think officially the first spell, the first ritual that I did was on Mabon in 2022. So we are now in October, so yeah, it's a little over a year. And that happened for not the nicest of reasons. So buckle up, there's a bit of trigger warning mentioning of that, and just so you know, I'm letting you know. You know what, if you're uncomfortable with talks of death or those kind of things, I will put here the timestamp of when we end the story as to why I've got into witchcraft. Ready? So in September of 2022, I had been at that point, I think, technically agnostic for most of my life, despite being raised Catholic. I guess being raised in the place that has the Vatican didn't bode well for Catholicism. The church is not an institution that I respect in any way. So to me, I could never abandon the idea that there's a higher force, but I couldn't recognize it, hence I was agnostic. Since I was around 16, I first read a book by Dr. Brian Weiss. No, Only Love is Real is the title in English, sorry. And so because of that, I kind of got into the idea that, oh, wouldn't it be nice if we reincarnate, if we don't lose completely everything? Which I appreciate is part of the vanity of the ego, I guess, but you know. But other than that, no, nothing else much. However, I did recognize this higher force because at times things happened that statistically shouldn't have happened to me. Shouldn't have happened to those, to someone in that position or with those characteristics, but did, and were completely life-changing. And so I knew that there was this a big entity, a bigger thing, the universe, but something, I guess, conscious, some kind of intelligence, let's say. And so that's the baseline that I've lived with. And then about a decade ago, I met who is nowadays my spouse. They were very much atheists, so because I guess I look up to their view of the world, they are a very, very clever person, I naturally started to go in that direction. And admittedly, what I was doing before was very much related to science, to biology. So as much as I wanted to believe into something more like reincarnation or those kind of things, I knew practically what we could know and find realistically told us when we pass away, when we stop having consciousness, we stop existing, and that's it. But I never quite thought much about it. I have an insane fear of death, which has just gotten worse in the last few years because of a few health scares that I've gone through. But anyway, last year, very, very suddenly, my cat of 8 years, who was 13 at the time, very, very suddenly is unwell. And I take him to a vet, I take him to another, they want to do a scan. To do a scan, they need to give him a tranquilizer or put it under anesthesia. And unfortunately for what he had, the anesthesia was almost basically fatal. And in the span of not even a day, I lost this, to me person, this entity that was part of my family that I actually adopted just before I adopted my wife. He was family in every possible way, and probably it's also my autistic brain thinking that way because, again, rituals and things that I'm used to. It was very hard to make people understand that it was like a loss in the family. Like when I mentioned that it was a pet, people wouldn't take it. Oh, like it wouldn't take it as seriously as it made me feel. And what it made me feel was for 2 weeks straight, I cried every day, very, very heavily. I couldn't eat, which is not like me. And it just turned on its head my perception of life. And if the point was that something like that could happen like that, then what does anything have meaning for? We are just worm food in waiting. As you can imagine, that wasn't a great outlook to have in life. It took genuinely the joy out of everything. And I guess my wife started to be a bit concerned for me. And so after like a week or so, she suggested, why don't we do like a ritual that it's sort of a funeral, sort of a sending him on his way healthily and safely for Whisk, which was my cat. And that was bizarre because, again, my wife is very practical. Is the person that basically made me turn from agnosticism to sort of atheism. So I was like, that's bizarre to hear. I knew that I could never quite talk to her about like reincarnation because, again, it's something that I looked at hopefully, but at best they would tell me it's good that it makes you feel good. So it's that kind of thing. So it was really, really weird to hear something like that from her. But that we do. Like I gather rocks, we do a little ritual with a piece of silver as well, so that Whiska can pay Charon and cross the sticks. I think to me it was very important to have something like that, because even from a very, very practical and scientific perspective, the point was like, well, a sudden death like this takes the joy out of life. So if doing this kind of ritual, even if there's nothing at the other end of life or death, this makes me feel better now and gives quality of life to me now. So it's something worth doing. And so that's how I got into witchcraft. I think the first spell we did then was a mutual protection spell because, of course, given the anxiety of that sudden happening, I wanted the only other part of my family, which is my wife, to be safe. And that's how I got into my actual current practice last year. For the last year or so, I have watched, without interruption almost, most of the videos of Alwyn Oak, which is very lovely. She gives an atmosphere other than just like talking about witchy things, which is very, very nice. I wish I had the time and attention to do that kind of thing. She has an ability to break down details and do things that I don't. Maybe my wife could, but I don't. I live in Wales, South Wales, Cardiff, in the UK. I've moved here a few years ago. If you ask me where home is, I will tell you it's London. I have 2 cats now. One of these is this one, who is Stella. I have a thing for tuxedo cats. Whiska was a tuxedo cat as well. Whiska actually rests just behind the camera, and it's part of my rituals to say good morning and good night to him, and he has a little light, and he has the little spell bag that we made for his safe travels last year. I live with my wife. She's a professional photographer, so all the nice things looking here, it's not me, it's her. In my day life, other than dealing with my disabilities, because autism is considered that, but there's also disabilities that I acquired after COVID, with long COVID. Other than that, I have thankfully, but accidentally, become sort of a professional activist. No, it's not quite a thing, but I'm an educator and an activist in the South Wales region, and I try to do my best to educate and support the rights of queer people of color, of which I am one. I am a non-binary femme. There could be a lot to talk about that, which maybe we can do a video about. I have so many ideas for videos to come, but this was to be mainly an introduction of me and why I'm here and what I do, and would you be interested to hear more from me? And if that's the case, I think you should let me know. With any chance, I can give you more cat. This is a promise that I can make. And because I spend a lot of time in my house, it's my safe place. I have so many more nooks and crannies to film from and to show, and I realized accidentally that making this video after a year or something that I've had like other social medias under, well, currently the name is A Coven of Two, which is the name of my Etsy shop, Witchy Etsy shop. But it might change in time, I don't know, I have ideas. But the main thing, as I mentioned at the beginning, to open this channel was to realize that whiteness, at times, it's its own kind of oppression to others. When I went to this market that I mentioned at the beginning last week, I was made keenly aware of my otherness. And I live sort of on the fence about thinking, oh, but am I not white passing? I have that privilege, I need to be aware of that. But I think I am more white passing than what people perceive of me, because I am made incredibly, again, aware of how differently people treat me when I'm in a room with other people who are all white. I was holding this stall, and I'm not used to just talk to people. I was doing my crochet. My wife has experience of retail, I don't. But it was very bizarre to notice that even not knowing the people at the stalls, people would stop and talk to them, but not to me. And if I was to talk to them, they would immediately stop browsing my stall. And I am sure that part of it comes from my own trauma, having been raised in a country like Italy, which is insanely racist. You wouldn't believe. Like, Italy is amazing for tourism if you want to go there. However, if you are an LGBTQ person or a person of color, careful even about that. It's insane to me that Italy can be considered a modern country in 21st century with the things that they allow. Commonly, like, the majority will heckle you if you are visibly different from anything. I actually, in another life, in another channel, I talk about these kind of things. I try to make social commentary and video essays. You know what? I won't mention, but there's a link in the description if you want to check the kind of stuff out. That's more my activism side. But yeah, because of that, I've always had this feeling of being a guest, even in the country where I was born. I've never been to Egypt, but I am half Egyptian. And Italy never allowed me to forget that in a very, very bad way. And the retail experience of being even in a witchy market, that should be, you know, at the very least we have something in common. We are pagans, because of that we are a minority, we should stick together. That's always been my thought. Like, I get to a circle of people that I didn't know were there. I thought that I was the only one, so we find each other and we start sharing. And the witchy context that I at least found in South Wales is not there yet. It's not there yet. Let's just say that. So after that, I got home. I was like, I'm gonna clear out the Etsy shop. I don't want to do this anymore. Unfortunately, I took a commitment for another market, which is gonna be in December here in Cardiff. We'll see where that goes, but that's what made me realize what I know how to do and what I like to do and what is safe for me to do is this kind of thing. Because if you're here, you can click away, you don't need to look weirdly at me, and we're fine. And if you like it, we can talk more. And I do hope that that is the case. But I can't blabber in front of a camera. and Stella is going through his ablutions. So you know what? I think this was enough of an introduction. And if you would like to know more, to hear more, maybe let me know about what. Would you like me to tell you about my deity work? Would you like me to talk about witchcraft in Italy and what I've been exposed to as a child? Would you like to talk about witchy activism, which, hey, she don't need no receipts. She knows what she's talking about. Would you like to talk about queer in your craft, which I know there are a lot of books about, but especially my main thing, which is tarot ancestor work and deity work. I guess it's my main thing. I'm extremely, extremely detailed and precise to a fault, because sometimes I get lost in details and then I don't do because I keep on going in loops. But hey, other than that, if you'd like to hear more from a fat, queer, autistic witch of color, do let me know in the comments. And until the next video, I hope we can X the patriarchy together.